The Pilgrim's Progress, Part 2, Chapter 3. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Pilgrim's Progress, by John Bunyan, Part 2, Chapter 3, The Interpreter's House. Thus now, when they had talked away a little more time, they drew near to a house which stood in the way, which house was built for the relief of pilgrims, as you will find more fully related in the first part of these records of the Pilgrim's Progress. So they drew on towards the house of the interpreter, and when they came to the door they heard a great talk in the house. Then they gave ear, and heard, as they thought, Christiana mentioned by name. For you must know that there went along, even before her, a talk of her and her children's going on pilgrimage. And this was the more pleasing to them, because they had heard she was Christian's wife, that woman who was some time ago so unwilling to hear of going on pilgrimage. Thus, therefore, they stood still, and heard the good people within commending her, who, they little thought, stood at the door. At last Christiana knocked, as she had done at the gate before. Now when she had knocked, there came to the door a young maiden, and opened the door, and looked. And behold, 2 women were there. Then said the maid to them,
"With whom would you speak in this place?"
Christiana answered,
"We understand that this is a place prepared for those that are become pilgrims, and we now at this door are such, wherefore we pray that we may be partakers of that for which we at this time are come. For the day, as thou seest, is very far spent, and we are loth to-night to go any farther."
"Pray, what may I call your name, that I may tell it to my lord within?"
"My name is Christiana. I was the wife of that pilgrim that some years ago did travel this way, and these be his 4 children. This young woman is my companion, and is going on pilgrimage too."
Then Innocent ran in, for that was her name, and said to those within,
"Can you think who is at the door? There are Christiana and her children, and her companion, all waiting for entertainment here."
Then they leaped for joy, and went and told their master. So he came to the door, and looking upon her, he said,
"Art thou that Christiana, whom Christian the good man left behind, when he betook himself to a pilgrim's life?"
"I am that woman that was so hard-hearted as to slight my husband's troubles, and then left him to go on his journey alone, and these are his 4 children. But now also I am come, for I am convinced that no way is right but this."
Then is fulfilled that which is written of the man that said to his son, "Go, work today in my vineyard." And he said to his father, "I will not." But afterwards he repented and went.
Then said Christiana,
"So be it. Amen. God made it a true saying upon me, and grant that I may be found at the last of him in peace, without spot and blameless."
"But why standest thou thus at the door? Come in, thou blessed one. We were talking of thee but now, for tidings have come to us before how thou art become a pilgrim. Come, children, come in. Come, maiden, come in."
So he had them all into the house. So when they were within, they were bidden to sit down and rest them. The which, when they had done, those that attended upon the pilgrims in the house came into the room to see them. And one smiled, and another smiled, and they all smiled for joy that Christiana was become a pilgrim. They also looked upon the boys. They stroked them over the faces with the hand, in token of their kind reception of them. They also carried it lovingly to Mercy, and bid them all welcome into their master's house. After a while, because supper was not ready, the interpreter took them into his significant rooms, and showed them what Christiana's husband, had seen some time before. Here, therefore, they saw the man in the cage, the man and his dream, the man that cut his way through his enemies, and the picture of the biggest of them all, together with the rest of those things that were then so profitable to Christian. This done, and after those things had been seen and thought of by Christiana and her company, the interpreter takes them apart again, and has them first into a room where was a man that could look no way but downwards, with a muck-rake in his hand. There stood also one over his head, with a celestial crown in his hand, and proffered to give him that crown for his muck-rake. But the man did neither look up nor regard, but raked to himself the straws, the small sticks, and the dust of the floor. Then said Christiana,
I persuade myself that I know somewhat the meaning of this, for this is a figure of a man of this world. Is it not, good sir?
Thou hast said the right,
said he.
And his muckrake doth show his worldly mind. And whereas thou seest him rather give heed to rake up straws and sticks, and the dust off the floor, than to do what he says that calls to him from above with the celestial crown in his hand, it is to show that heaven is but a fable to some, and that things here are counted the only things substantial. Now, whereas it was also showed thee that the man could look no way but downwards, it is to let thee know that earthly things, when they are with power upon men's minds, quite carry their hearts away from God.
Then said Christiana,
Oh, deliver me from this muckrake.
That prayer,
said the interpreter,
has lain by till it is almost rusty. Give me not riches is scarce the prayer of one of 10,000. Straws and sticks and dust, with most, are the great things now looked after.
With that, Mercy and Christiana wept, and said,
It is, alas, too true.
When the interpreter had showed them this, he had them into the very best room in the house. A very brave room it was. So he bid them look round about, and see if they could find anything there. Then they looked round and round, for there was nothing to be seen but a very great spider on the wall, and that they overlooked. Then said Mercy,
Sir, I see nothing.
But Christiana held her peace.
But,
said the interpreter,
look again.
She therefore looked again, and said,
Here is not anything but an ugly spider, who hangs by her hands upon the wall.
Then said he,
Is there but one spider in all this spacious room?
Then the water stood in Christiana's eyes, for she was a woman quick of mind, and she said,
Yes, my lord, there is here more than one, yea, and spiders whose venom is far more destructive than that which is in her.
The interpreter then looked pleasantly upon her, and said,
Thou hast said the truth.
This made Mercy blush, and the boys to cover their faces, for they all began now to understand the riddle. Then said the interpreter again,
The spider taketh hold with her hands, as you see, and is in kings' palaces. And wherefore is this recorded, but to show you that, how full of venom of sin soever you be, yet you may, by the hand of faith, lay hold of and dwell in the best room that belongs to the king's house above.
I thought,
said Christiana,
of something of this, but I could not imagine it all. I thought that we were like spiders, and that we looked like ugly creatures, in what fine rooms soever we were, but that by this spider, this venomous and ill-favoured creature, we were to learn how to act faith, that came not into my mind, and yet she has taken hold with her hands, and, as I see, dwelleth in the best room in the house. God has made nothing in vain.
Then they seemed all to be glad, but the water stood in their eyes. Yet they looked one upon the other, and also bowed before the interpreter. He had them then into another room, where were a hen and chickens, and bid them observe a while. So one of the chickens went to the trough to drink, and every time she drank, she lifted up her head and her eyes toward heaven.
See,
said he,
what this little chick doth, and learn of her to acknowledge whence your mercies come, by receiving them with looking up. Yet again,
said he,
observe and look.
So they gave heed, and perceived that the hen did walk in a fourfold method towards her chickens. First, she had a common call, and that she hath all day long. Secondly, she had a special call, and that she had but sometimes. Thirdly, she had a brooding note, and fourthly, she had an outcry.
Now,
said he,
compare this hen to your king, and these chickens to his obedient ones. For, answerable to her, he himself hath his methods which he walketh in towards his people. By his common call he gives nothing. By his special call he always has something to give. He also has a brooding voice for them that are under his wing, and he hath an outcry to give the alarm when he seeth the enemy come. I chose, my darlings, to lead you into the room where such things are, because you are women, and they are easy for you.
And, sir,
said Christiana,
pray let us see some more.
So he had them into the slaughter-house, where the butcher was killing a sheep. And behold, the sheep was quiet, and took her death patiently. Then said the interpreter,
You must learn of this sheep to suffer, and to put up with wrongs without murmurings and complaints. Behold how quietly she takes her death, and, without objecting, she suffereth her skin to be pulled over her ears. Your king doth call you his sheep.
After this he led them into his garden, where was great variety of flowers. And he said,
Do you see all these?
So Christiana said,
Yes.
Then said he again,
Behold, the flowers are diverse in stature, in quality, in colour, and smell, and virtue, and some are better than others. Also, where the gardener has set them, there they stand, and quarrel not with one another.
Again he held them into his field, which he had sowed with wheat and corn. But when they beheld, the tops of all were cut off, and only the straw remained. He said again,
This ground was made rich, and was ploughed and sowed, but what shall we do with the crop?
Then said Christiana,
Burn some, and make muck of the rest.
Then said the interpreter again,
Fruit, you see, is that thing you look for, and for want of that you send it to the fire, and to be trodden under foot of men. Beware that in this you condemn not yourselves.
Then, as they were coming in from abroad, they espied a little robin with a great spider in his mouth. So the interpreter said,
Look here.
So they looked, and Mercy wondered. But Christiana said,
What a disparagement is it to such a pretty little bird as the robin redbreast is, he being also a bird above many, that loveth to maintain a kind of sociableness with man. I had thought they had lived upon crumbs of bread, or upon other such harmless matter. I like him worse than I did.
The interpreter then replied,
This robin is an emblem very apt to set forth some people by. For to sight they are as this robin, pretty of note, colour, and conduct. They seem also to have a very great love for those that are sincere followers of Christ, and above all other to desire to associate with them, and to be in their company, as if they could live upon the good man's crumbs. They pretend also that therefore it is that they frequent the house of the godly and the appointments of the Lord. But when they are by themselves, as the robin, they can catch and gobble up spiders, they can change their diet, drink wickedness, and swallow down sin like water.
So when they were come again into the house, because supper as yet was not ready, Christiana again desired that the interpreter would either show or tell of some other things that were profitable. Then the interpreter began, and said,
The fatter the sow is, the more she desires the mire. The fatter the ox is, the more thoughtlessly he goes to the slaughter. And the more healthy the lusty man is, the more prone he is unto evil. There is a desire in women to go neat and fine, and it is a comely thing to be adorned with that which in God's sight is of great price. 'Tis easier watching a night or two than to sit up a whole year together. So 'tis easier for one to begin to profess well than to hold out as he should to the end. Every shipmaster, when in a storm, will willingly cast that overboard which is of the smallest value in the vessel. But who will throw the best out first? None but he that feareth not God. One leak will sink a ship, and one sin will destroy a sinner. He that forgets his friend is ungrateful unto him, but he that forgets his Saviour is unmerciful to himself. He that lives in sin and looks for happiness hereafter is like him that soweth weeds, and thinks to fill his barn with wheat and barley. If a man would live well, let him bring before him his last day, and make it always his company-keeper. Whispering and change of thoughts prove that sin is in the world. If the world, which God sets light by, is counted a thing of that worth with men, what is heaven that God commendeth? If the life that is attended with so many troubles is so loath to be let go by us, what is the life above? Everybody will cry up the goodness of men, but who is there that is, as he should be, affected with the goodness of God?
When the interpreter had done, he takes them out into the garden again, and had them to a tree, whose inside was all rotten and gone, and yet it grew and had leaves. Then said Mercy,
What means this?
This tree,
said he,
whose outside is fair, and whose inside is rotten, is that to which many may be compared that are in the garden of God, who with their mouths speak high in behalf of God, but indeed will do nothing for him, whose leaves are fair, but their heart good for nothing but to be tinder for the devil's tinderbox.
Now supper was ready, the table spread, and all things set on the board. So they sat down and did eat when one had given thanks. And the interpreter did usually entertain those that lodged with him with music at meals. So the minstrels played. There was also one that did sing, and a very fine voice he had. His song was this: The Lord is only my support, and he that doth me feed. How can I then want anything whereof I stand in need? When the song and music were ended, the interpreter asked Christian what it was that first did move her to betake herself to a pilgrim's life. Christiana answered,
First, the loss of my husband came into my mind, at which I was heartily grieved, but all that was but natural affection. Then after that came the troubles and pilgrimages of my husband into my mind, and also how unkindly I had behaved to him as to that. So guilt took hold of my mind, and would have drawn me into the pond, to drown myself, but that, just at the right time, I had a dream of the well-being of my husband, and a letter sent by the king of that country, where my husband dwells, to come to him. The dream and the letter together so wrought upon my mind, that they forced me to this way.
But met you with no opposition afore you set out of doors?
Yes, a neighbour of mine, one Mrs. Timorous. She was akin to him that would have persuaded my husband to go back for fear of the lions. She all to befooled me, for, as she called it, my intended desperate adventure. She also urged what she could to dishearten me from it, the hardship and troubles that my husband met with in the way. But all this I got over pretty well. But a dream that I had of two ill-looked ones, that I thought did plot how to make me fail in my journey, that hath troubled me much. Yea, it still runs in my mind, and makes me afraid of every one that I meet, lest they should meet me to do me a mischief, and to turn me out of my way. Yea, I may tell my lord, though I would not have everybody know it, that between this and the gate by which we got into the way, we were both so sorely attacked that we were made to cry out murder, and the two that made this attack upon us were like the two that I saw in my dream.
Then said the interpreter,
Thy beginning is good, thy latter end shall greatly increase.
So he addressed himself to Mercy, and said unto her,
And what moved thee to come hither, sweetheart?
Then Mercy blushed and trembled, and for a while continued silent. Then said he,
Be not afraid, only believe, and speak thy mind.
So she began, and said,
Truly, sir, my lack of knowledge is that which makes me wish to be in silence, and that also fills me with fears of coming short at last. I cannot tell of visions and dreams, as my friend Christiana can, nor know I what it is to mourn for my refusing the advice of those that were good relations.
What was it then, dear heart, that hath prevailed thee to do as thou hast done?
Why, when our friend here was packing up to be gone from our town, I and another went accidentally to see her. So we knocked at the door, and we went in. When we were within, and seeing what she was doing, we asked her what was her meaning. She said she was sent for to go with her husband, and then she up and told us how she had seen him in a dream, dwelling in a wonderful place among immortals, wearing a crown, playing upon a harp, eating and drinking at his prince's table, and singing praises to him for bringing him thither, and so on. Now methought while she was telling these things unto us, my heart burned within me, and I said in my heart, If this be true, I will leave my father and my mother and the land of my birth, and will, if I may, go along with Christiana. So I asked her further of the truth of these things, and if she would let me go with her, for I saw now that there was no dwelling, but with the danger of ruin any longer in our town. But yet I came away with a heavy heart, not for that I was unwilling to come away, but for that so many of my relations were left behind. And I am come with the desire of my heart, and will go, if I may, with Christiana, unto her husband and his king.
Thy setting out is good, for thou hast given credit to the truth. Thou art a Ruth, who did, for the love she bare to Naomi, and to the Lord her God, leave father and mother and the land of her birth, to come out and go with a people that she knew not heretofore. The Lord bless thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust.
Now supper was ended, and preparation was made for bed. The women were laid singly alone, and the boys by themselves. Now when Mercy was in bed, she could not sleep for joy, for that now her doubts of missing at last were removed farther from her than ever they were before. So she lay blessing and praising God, who had such favour for her. In the morning they arose with the sun, and prepared themselves for their departure, but the interpreter would have them tarry a while.
For,
said he,
you must orderly go from hence.
Then said he to the maid that first opened to them,
Take them, and have them into the garden, to the bath, and there wash them, and make them clean from the soil which they have gathered by travelling.
Then Innocent the maid took them, and had them into the garden, and brought them to the bath. So she told them they must wash and be clean, for so her master would have the women to do that called at his house, as they were going on pilgrimage. Then they went in and washed, yea, they and the boys and all, and they came out of the bath, not only sweet and clean, but also much enlivened and strengthened in their joints. So when they came in, they looked fairer a deal than when they went out to the washing. When they were returned out of the garden from the bath, the interpreter took them, and looked upon them, and said unto them,
Fair as the moon.
Then he called for a seal, wherewith they used to be sealed that were washed in this bath. So the seal was brought, and he set his mark upon them, that they might be known in the places whither they were yet to go, and the mark was set between their eyes. This seal added greatly to their beauty, for it was an ornament to their faces. It also added to their glory, and made their countenances more like those of angels. Then said the interpreter again to the maid that waited upon these women,
Go into the vestry, and fetch out garments for these people.
So she went and fetched out white raiment, and laid it down before him. So he commanded them to put it on. It was fine linen, white and clean. When the women were thus adorned, they seemed to be afraid one of the other, for that they could not see that glory each one had in herself, which they could see in each other. Now, therefore, they began to esteem each other better than themselves, for,
You are fairer than I am,
said one, and
You are more beautiful than I am,
said another. The children also stood amazed to see into what fashion they were brought. The interpreter then called for a manservant of his, one Greatheart, and bid him take sword and helmet and shield, and
Take these my daughters,
said he,
and conduct them to the house called Beautiful, at which place they will rest next.
So he took his weapons and went before them, and the interpreter said,
Godspeed.
Those also that belonged to the family sent them away with many a good wish. So they went on their way and sang.
This place hath been our second stage. Here we have heard and seen those good things that from age to others hid have been. The dunghill raker, spider, hen, the chicken too, to me, have taught a lesson. Let me then conformed to it be.
The butcher garden and the field, the robin and his bait, also the rotten tree, doth yield me argument of weight, to move me for to watch and pray, to strive to be sincere, to take my cross up day by day, and serve the Lord with fear.
End of Part 2, Chapter 3.
Thank you for listening. If you want to know more about Jesus and what the gospel means to you, then hit the video shown on the left of the screen and please don't forget to subscribe. May the Lord Jesus Christ bless your day.